Welcome to Audiobook 365 Stories.
Before I tell you the story about Smith's sister, said Stanislaus Yarrow, I want to talk about sisters in general. There are two kinds of sisters, your own and other people's. Some boys, especially older ones, think their own sisters are worse than other people's sisters. Yes, that's true, said Martin Abbott, who people thought liked Dr. Odlum's aunt, who was a little over 40. But most boys think that all sisters, all girls, really are boring and annoying. Yes, they are, agreed many voices happily. I thought this way once. But Smith's sister showed me that girls can be better than I thought. I agree that they have problems. They can't help it. Sometimes, I even think that boys are not perfect. I know that girls can act silly sometimes. I know that they scream when there is no reason to scream. It is true that they are scared of mice. Even Smith's sister was scared when I offered to give her my biggest pet rat, to be hers forever. But we should be kind and try to ignore these things because, as I said, they can't help it. What I want to say is that girls can be brave too. Here is how I understand it. Smith's sister was brave. Smith's sister is a girl. So, other girls, other sisters, can also be brave. Now for my true story. To explain the details of the story, I will first give you the background. Smith and I lived next door to each other, and we were good friends, especially at times. He was a very kind guy. He would give a friend anything he had. When he got sick last summer, I sneaked into his room through the veranda to see him, and he gave me scarlet fever. He was so kind that he never wanted to keep anything to himself. The fever stayed with both of us for a long time and made us much weaker. Seeing that we both needed a long rest, Smith's father and my father decided to send us to North Wales for the rest of the summer and autumn. They quickly made the plan. They didn't exactly send us, because they came with us. In fact, a lot of us traveled together from Paddington, Smith, me, Smith's father and mother, my father and mother, a lot of boxes and bags, and Smith's sister. I mention her last because at that time, she was the last person I thought about. We had a lovely journey to a small, quiet, and faraway station. The name of the station had many letters, and it was hard to say. From the station, we had a long drive to the remote farmhouse where our fathers had rented rooms for us. In this wonderful old farmhouse, Smith and I soon felt at home. It was in a beautiful valley. Big hills rose all around it. On the tops of some of the mountains, there was snow almost all year round. There were many small valleys, brooks, streams, and waterfalls. After 2 weeks, our fathers had to go back to London, leaving behind our mothers, us, and Smith's sister. Oh, what a time we had then. Smith accidentally shot me in the leg with the farmer's gun. Smith almost drowned in 2 different streams and was once carried over a waterfall and hit the stones. Each time, he was turning blue in the face when he was pulled out. I fell down a steep cliff in the mountains and was saved with great difficulty. One time, A nearby farmer caught us on his land and hit us with a stick until he was too tired to hold it. Smith got bitten by a dog that people thought was mad, and a horse kicked me in the stomach. Everything was fun and exciting. When will we have such times again? We even asked if we could catch scarlet fever a second time. Now, Smith's sister screamed at our accidents. She was afraid to join us in any of our adventures. She was as old as I was, and only a year younger than Smith, but as scared as a chicken, or so we thought because she seemed that way. At first, we tried to encourage her, to get her to join us, but it was no use. We just had to leave her alone. She isn't brave enough to come with us, Smith used to say when we set off on our adventures. Let her stay at home and play with the chickens. You must understand that we didn't dislike her. We just looked down on her. I think looking down on someone is worse than disliking them. At least, it is harder to take. Week after week passed, and soon it was the end of September. In a few days, we were going home again. Now, as high as all the hills were, there was one that was the highest. From the very start, Smith and I were told not to try to climb this big mountain, whose top was sometimes visible and sometimes hidden in the clouds. Being told not to do it, we naturally wanted to do it. We had tried several times, but were always stopped. Once or twice, Mr. Griffiths, the farmer at whose house we were staying, caught us starting to climb and turned us back. Up towards the top of that mountain, he said the last time, is a place so hard to get to, except by one way, that it is called the Eagle's Home. People have died there. The hill is dangerous. The cracks are steep and deep. Leave it alone. There are plenty of other hills to climb that are not so dangerous. That mention of the Eagle's Home was more than we could ignore. We could see the very spot he meant. Imagine being up there with the eagles near the sky. Imagine finding birds' nests in the clouds. Yarrow, said Smith firmly, we must do it. Or die trying. I agreed without thinking, quoting from a book I'd read. What we meant was, of course, that before our visit ended, we must climb that hill, at least as high as the Eagle's Home. Our upcoming return to London left us with no time to waste. We had only 4 clear days left. We'll start climbing right after lunch tomorrow, said Smith. All right, I replied. The next day arrived. Lunch was always over soon after 1 at the farmhouse, and by 2 o'clock, after slipping away quietly and secretly, we started our climb up the hillside. For more than an hour, we made slow but easy progress, taking a rest every now and then for a minute or 2. We must have climbed a good distance, but neither the mountain top nor the Eagle's Home seemed much closer. On and up we trudged, walking faster and deciding not to rest anymore. We noticed how much colder it was and looked worriedly at the setting sun. We met a shepherd coming down and stopped him to ask some questions. He told us there was an easy way and a hard way to reach the Eagle's Home. The easy way was to follow the path worn up the hill to the left. That would take us above the spot. Then, following the path as it curved to the right, we would find a fairly easy way down to the home of the eagles, unless we lost the path and fell down one of the many steep slopes. What was the hard way? We asked. With a smile, he pointed straight up the mountain. It wasn't far that way, he said. Only that way would take us farther than we wanted to go. We looked up the steep, pathless mountain and knew what he meant. We had to take the safer and longer way. Not that we're afraid of the other way, said Smith. Of course not, I replied. The shepherd tried to stop us from going any further in the failing light. He told us about the dangers we would face. We thanked him, gave him some excuse about going a little further, and turned to go up the path he had shown us. It was not the kind of path we were used to. We kept walking and walking. I don't know how far we went. The farther we went, the quieter we became. Each of us knew that the other was getting more and more scared with every step. Each of us knew that the other wasn't going to be the first to say he was scared. It got so very cold. It got so very dark. The moon will come up soon, Smith said. Yes, I said. We will be all right then. What's this? It was too dark to see it, but we felt it on our faces. We put our hands on our sleeves and felt it there. Snow. We both gave up then and got scared without hiding it. We turned to go down, to get home. At first, we tried not to believe it, but soon we both knew the truth. We're lost. We cried together. That was just our situation. In the cold, dark night, in the middle of a quickly rising storm and fast-falling snow, we were lost on the wild Welsh mountains. We stumbled around. For a long time, I don't know how long, but it was a long time, we stumbled around. That's the only way I can describe it, because soon we didn't know if we were moving up or down, left or right. We were so cold and confused. It was so cold up there, even though it wasn't October yet, that we had a vague idea that if we didn't keep moving, we would freeze, like many other mountaineers. You must remember that we had nothing to eat, nothing to drink, and only our summer clothes on. Neither of us had a watch, so we could only guess what the time was. Smith's hope that the moon would rise soon didn't come true because everything above was as dark and black as everything below. At last, something terrible happened. Our feet slipped at the same moment, and the next moment we were both falling through the air. My previous slip down a steep cliff was nothing compared to that awful fall in the darkness. Only one thing saved us. Before we hit the ground, we managed to break the fall by grabbing the roots and branches of some low-growing shrubs and bushes which we felt without seeing. We then slipped more slowly from hold to hold until, with a thud, we hit the ground. It felt more like the ground hit us. Smith gave a loud scream of pain. Then everything was silent. Smith fainted. I cried. Smith woke up and cried. Then I stopped crying and fainted. I won't talk about our prayers because praying is something personal. We didn't move anymore. The fall showed us that it was too dangerous. Poor Smith couldn't move. He couldn't even stand up. He tried once and screamed as he fell back down. He had hurt his ankle. Now, imagine the adventure is like a play on a stage and the curtain falls. Now, imagine the curtain rises again. The storm has stopped. The wind isn't howling anymore and the snow isn't falling. We can see parts of the mountain and the deep valley below. We can see where we are. We are at the eagle's home. We reached it, but not the way we planned. We fell from the top, through the air with the snowflakes. Pretty snowflakes. Smith is badly hurt, and I have a lot of bumps and bruises. We have to stay here on this high spot for the rest of the cold night. We have to wait until morning, if we can survive the night. What's that down there, far away? A light. Many lights. They're moving, coming up. They've reached the place where we talked to the shepherd who told us about the two ways. They've stopped. Listen. What's that? A shout, a loud call, like a lot of people calling together. Hooray! We're saved. The farmer sent a rescue party to find and save us. Hooray! Using all my strength, all that's left, I reply to the shout. Smith joins me as best he can. We shout 3 times. We hear a distant cry, telling us they've heard us. For a moment, the lights stay still. Then, they start moving toward us, flashing their lanterns. Mr. Griffiths, who knows the hills well, told them where we were from the direction of our voices. So cheer up, Smith, they're coming. But they'll take a long time, and we're so cold and numb. Smith is fainting again. So am I, because I'm banged up. It will be a long time before help gets here. Or will it? Then what's that light coming up below us? Who's coming the hard way, straight up the steep mountainside? It must be Griffiths. He's climbing up the rocks, grabbing onto roots and branches, crossing the gaps. The shepherd said it couldn't be done, but Griffiths is doing it. His hands must be torn up. I can't be completely fainting because I see Griffith's lantern getting closer. Listen, I can hear his voice, though it sounds weak. I'm getting weak too, but I managed to call back, so Griffiths knows where we are. Griffiths has reached us. He's helping poor Smith. Now he's holding on to me. Griffiths is giving me something to drink that makes me feel alive again. I can feel my heart beating. I'm better now. I'll shake Griffith's hand soon. But this is Smith's sister's hand. The strain of this style and tense is too much, so I hope you understand what happened. Just a few words to sum up. When Mr. Griffiths formed the rescue party after realizing we were lost, Smith's sister joined them. Griffiths told her to go back, but she took a lantern and flask for herself and followed them. When they shouted to find us, Griffiths told her to go back again, but not before she heard the plan to stick to the safer way. She heard about the two ways and chose the one everyone else avoided. The climb up the mountain's face was her idea, and only Smith's sister had the courage to do it. This was the girl we laughed at and told to stay home. About an hour after she reached us with the first aid that may have saved our lives, we saw the lights of Griffith's party above us. We shouted, and they lowered a rope and pulled us up. Before this, Smith's sister had wrapped up his ankle with her handkerchief and ours. You should have seen the farmer's face, and everyone else's too, when they realized how she reached us. She may say she didn't know what she was doing, but she did what I told you she did. Remember what I said at the start. There's real courage in girls. That's clear from what I've told you. QED.